Welcome back to my channel, everybody, Restaurant Recipe Recreations. And if this is your first time joining us, then welcome. This channel is dedicated in teaching you how to create your favorite signature dishes from the most popular restaurants. And in this episode today, I'm going to teach you how to recreate the baked potato soup from the Outback Steakhouse. With over 1,000 locations in 23 countries, it's very likely that you've eaten at an Outback Steakhouse before. But in case you've never eaten at an Outback Steakhouse before, the Outback Steakhouse is a very, very popular American steakhouse with an Australian theme. They offer large cuts of steak, baked potato, things like shrimp on the barbie, grilled lobster tails, and they originated in the 1980s in the Florida markets. And in fact, their headquarters are located in Tampa under the name of Bloomin' Brands, which of course that name was derived from their ever popular appetizer, the Bloomin' Onion. My first memories of Outback Steakhouse began in the 1980s when I traveled every year from the Chicago area to Florida. And it was always very exciting to come down here and eat in an Outback Steakhouse because it was so unique and different. We didn't have anything like it in the Chicagoland area. And this was back in the day when the server would scoot you over in the booth or whatever, and they would sit down next to you and they would like try to cram everybody into the booth and they would take their order. And the 1980s were really an era when the big corporate restaurant chains were getting their footing in American culture. Restaurants like TGI Fridays, the Outback Steakhouse, Applebee's. And it was those big corporate chain restaurants that really changed the culture of American dining and American eating out, and really how Americans eat as a whole. So in this episode, I'm going to teach you how to recreate the baked potato soup, which has been on their menu since the inception of the restaurant chain itself, because it's just that popular. What makes this particular recipe different from other baked potato soups is that most often you will find that the baked potatoes in other baked potato soups require you to boil the potatoes and then to use like a burr mixer or a blender to puree and to emulsify the soup. But in this recipe, they actually bake their potatoes first, and then they make a cream soup. Then they chop up the potatoes and they put it back into the soup. So it's really more like a chowder. So I've got everything that I need here. I've got my bacon, I've got my cheddar and jack cheese, which are served as a garnish along with the chive. I've got my onion, and we're just going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to teach you how to recreate the baked potato soup from the Outback Steakhouse. But before I do, everybody, I would just like to ask that if you are enjoying this channel, if you find it informative, if you find it fun, and if you are in fact learning how to recreate some of the most popular and iconic dishes from the biggest restaurant names in America, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. So enough about that. I'm sure you've already subscribed before anyways. So let's go ahead and we're going to get you started on teaching you the baked potato soup, which is more like a chowder, but it's still called the baked potato soup at the Outback Steakhouse. So because I mentioned that the baked potatoes in this soup are actually baked and not boiled, we need to get these in the oven. They're going to take about an hour or so at 375. We need to get our bacon in the oven too, so that it gets nice and crispy for the topping. And these need to get a jump start on us. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I'm going to do with the potatoes first so we can get those in the oven. And then once those are done, we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to put the rest of the soup together. I've got 4 very, very large Idaho or russet potatoes, whatever you prefer to call them. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to drizzle them with olive oil, and then you're just going to work the olive oil all the way around. For my ladies out there, olive oil is fantastic for growing and strengthening your fingernails. I learned that in an Italian restaurant that I worked at when I was young. And if you dip your fingernails in olive oil for like 2 minutes every day, your nails are going to be fantastic. All right, I'm sure you men are so compelled by that. But you know, I like to help my ladies out. Ladies gotta stick together, right? And then we're going to sprinkle it with celery salt. This is just McCormick celery salt, and you're going to want to sprinkle them all the way around. You're going to flip them around, and you're going to hit the other side. Be generous. If it means that we add less salt to the actual soup, that's fine, but celery salt has just such an amazing and unique flavor. In fact, of course, being from Chicago, celery salt is the key element that goes on every Chicago hot dog. There's about 7 things or so that make a Chicago hot dog, and celery salt is one of those. And here's what else you want to do before you put the potatoes in the oven is you want to pierce the skin on the potatoes like 3 or 4 times, depending on how large they are. Sometimes baked potatoes get so hot that the internal heat causes the skin to burst, and then you have an exploded potato in your oven, and it's a real mess. So let's go ahead and put these in the oven. I've got my oven on 375 convection bake, and these are gonna go in for about an hour. So let's go put those in the oven right now. We'll come back and we'll slab up the bacon. The bacon is used for the garnish, but we might as well go ahead and do it now since we've got the potatoes in the oven anyways. So I have here 12 ounces of very, very high quality, thick slab bacon. And I prefer to do my bacon in the oven. If you like to fry it in the pan, I know some people even put it in the microwave. That has a tendency to be kind of messy and it gets your microwave all greasy. So I do like to do it this way. Whatever your favorite way to cook bacon is, obviously do it that way. But I will give you a tip. If you've never done bacon in the oven before, it'll be your new jam. So let's put this in the oven. I'm gonna put it in the same oven as the potatoes at 375. Okay, so these potatoes have been in the oven for exactly 1 hour and they are perfect. They are nice and soft, so we're gonna go ahead and dice these into about a 1/4 inch dice. I'm using a serrated knife just to keep the potato intact a little better. You don't want to have the potato be broken up too much, so we're just going to delicately cut these potatoes and we're going to set them aside in a different bowl. These are skin on, of course. And the nice thing about the skin is not only does it give the soup texture, it gives it extra flavor, it gives it extra color, and then remember we coated it in olive oil and celery salt. So you're going to bring those elements into the soup as well. Okay, now we've got our beautiful crisp bacon. Let's go ahead and chop that up. You want this to be in the size of a bacon bit because this is the garnish for the top. Okay, and now for the soup itself. I have got 2 tablespoons of bacon fat, which came from the bacon that we rendered earlier. This is not a low-calorie dish, but really, it's delicious, it's worth it. 1 stick of butter. Okay, now that the butter and the bacon grease have been almost completely melted, we're going to add the small dice of 1 very large yellow onion. You want to stir those onions around in the pan, and we're just going to let these sit and get translucent. Now that these onions have sweated down in the butter and the bacon grease and they're starting to get translucent, we're going to go ahead and add 1/2 cup of just regular all-purpose flour. And we're going to stir this in quickly. This acts as a thickening agent for the soup. So make sure that you quickly stir it in, and you're looking to get all the clumps out, but you don't want to burn the flour. So once that's well mixed in, we're going to add 6 cups of chicken broth. This is homemade chicken broth, which has a tendency to have less sodium in it than the store-bought. If you're buying store-bought chicken broth, you might want to buy the low sodium. Make sure that your pan is on high, and we're just going to go ahead and let this come up to a nice simmer. Okay, now that this chicken broth has come to a simmer, we're going to slowly add in 2 cups of heavy cream. And we're going to continue to whisk it the entire time. Now you want to add cracked black pepper, fresh kosher salt, and then we're just going to let this reduce before we incorporate the potatoes back into the soup. So just let this stay on simmer for about 10 minutes. Okay, my peeps, once this soup comes to a rolling boil and reduces about 20%, we're going to slowly add in diced potatoes. Now we don't want these to be too broken up, so we're just going to very slowly add them in. Gently give it a nice stir. Now you want this to come back up to a simmer because you want the starch from the potato to give this soup an opportunity to thicken up. We're still going to add some thickener to it to the end to make it more of like a creamy chowder, but we do want the potato starches to naturally thicken the soup. In this container right here, I have 4 tablespoons of cornstarch to 1/2 cup of chicken broth. I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on it. We're going to shake it up. And with your pan on high and the soup simmering, you're going to slowly drizzle in the cornstarch mixture, a little bit at a time, and then give it a stir. And that cornstarch is going to thicken up your soup. The key is that you want to keep the soup simmering because it's the heat that activates the cornstarch to thicken it, and it's the constant stirring that prevents it from clumping. And now this to me is perfect. This is the perfect consistency. That was 4 tablespoons of cornstarch to a half of a cup of chicken broth. And now to finish, I'm just going to add 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. I'm just going to give it a quick taste, see if it needs anything else. If it's good to go, then we're just going to garnish and serve. Oh my God, y'all, that's perfect. Okay, this soup is absolutely perfect. It needs nothing else except just to be eaten. So we're going to go ahead and garnish it the way that they do at the Outback. I'm going to add some cheddar and jack cheese blend to the top, delicious bacon, and then I have some chives. The easiest way I find to work with chives is to actually use some herb scissors. Cut it right on top there. All right, you got it. Okay, and there you have it. This is the Outback Steakhouse baked potato soup, garnished with fresh chives, that incredible bacon, and a Monterey Jack and cheddar blend. I gave this a little taste earlier to make sure that it didn't need anything else, but I didn't taste it with all that garnish on it, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Oh, it's so cheesy and creamy. Yes, please. Thank you all for watching, everybody. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter. And also, if you hit that notification bell, you'll be notified of all of my upcoming episodes. All right, everybody. Have an awesome day. Cheers. Love you.